On July 27, 1759, the British Army, under the command of General Geoffrey Amherst, will capture Fort Carillon, the French-built fort here on the south end of Lake Champlain. They will rename Fort Carillon Fort Ticonderoga, and a series of American provincial troops and British regiments will continue to garrison the fort until the end of the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, with the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1763. The British will continue to station soldiers and their families here at Fort Ticonderoga through the interwar years during the peacetime garrison, all the way up to the capture of the fort in May 10, 1775 by Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold. From the archaeological record, we have quite a few artifacts that represent this interwar period, this peacetime garrison, and the lives of the soldiers and the women that were living here at Fort Ticonderoga. Welcome back to another episode of From the Ground Up. My name is Margaret Stouter. I am the Registrar and Site Archaeologist here at Fort Ticonderoga, and for this episode we are going to be looking at a selection of artifacts that will be part of our upcoming exhibit Between the Wars, which will examine the interwar period here at Fort Ticonderoga, so from the capture of the fort by the British in 1759 all the way through the next capture of the fort by Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold in May of 1775. Now, for some reason, if you are not able, of course, to come see this exhibit in person, or if you are watching this video and it is no longer 2021, these objects are all available for viewing on the Ticonderoga Online Collections database, so I recommend going there to check them out as well. Now, in 1760, there was a fire in the officers' barracks on March 22nd, and it completely gutted the building. In the 17th Regiment, the officers that were here actually had to go live outside in tents. A few of them had to go live on some of the ships that were docked down off the shoreline here. And when they were rebuilding the officers' barracks, they decided to do a lot of building with brick. So the French, when they built the officers' barracks, had done cedar shingles. There was a lot of wood in the interior, but the British are going to use a lot of brick to do the rebuilding. And we have these two tiles here from 1760, and we know that they're from 1760 because the makers of the tiles etched 1760 into the brick while it was still wet. And these paving tiles, or paving bricks, would have come up from Fort George. These were made at Fort George and shipped up north here. And Fort George is on the south end of Lake George. And the French had a brickyard here during their occupation of the fort, but the British hadn't yet reestablished it. So these had to be shipped up and would have been used to help really make the building more steady from fires and claiming the building, and would have been used on the ground floor and not necessarily the upper floors. But it is interesting, there is a note from an officer here after the fires that occurred that notes that his barrack room, his officers' quarters, was mostly untouched due to having a brick floor in the officers' barracks. So there was a section of it that did have a brick floor. Now, the 17th Regiment are also the soldiers, or the officers, that are possibly using this section of punch bowl that was found here. And what's really great about this punch bowl is that after they found it, they stuck this sticker on it. So the punch bowl was found on April 4th, 1909, during the early restoration of the officers' barracks. And it was found in the passage from the West Barracks, which is also the officers' barracks, northward. And this is tin-glazed earthenware, and it says, "Success to General Amherst." And it was really popular in the sort of mid-early 18th century to write these different sayings in the bottom of punch bowls. Some of them are very euphoric and fun. Some of them also just say things like "Success to General Amherst," or "Success to trade," "Success to British arms." So what's interesting, of course, is that Amherst was such a big figure here in terms of our history and for the British Army capturing the fort in 1759. He also helps capture Louisbourg and Montreal. He is the overall commander of the British Army. He becomes an acting governor, so very prominent in terms of North American history. So these being made in England and shipped over here for people to use over here in North America. And tin-glazed earthenware was incredibly popular in the 18th century. It's a way for them to sort of mimic some of the Chinese export porcelain that was incredibly popular, but they hadn't really gotten that recipe yet for producing their own porcelain in England. It's also reminiscent of Dutch Delftware as well. And it was very easy for them to put these different sayings and images on them. And this was a punch bowl for the officers to be drinking punch out of. Now, the early British officers and British soldiers that were here, their regimental clothes wouldn't have had numbered buttons on it, because it's not until 1768 that there's a clothing warrant that lists that uniforms should now have numbered buttons on them, orders that go out for this to happen. But as soon as they do, we start seeing them in the archaeological record here. So 1768, when this warrant occurs, we also have the 16th Regiment of Foot here in 1768. And we have the 16th button. It's marked with the 1 and the 6 on it. The British regiment is making two-piece buttons, so these are buttons made in pewter molds that would have then had a second piece added to them, and it would have been an iron eye or rivet on the back that would have been soldered on. This one has lost its iron eye. And this is a larger button for the front of a uniform. We also have smaller buttons that we find, like the 60th Regiment of Foot button. And the 60th Regiment of Foot arrives in 1768 as well, but they are here until 1772. And smaller buttons like this would have been used on waistcoats or other parts of uniforms. This one has had a modern eye that has been added to it. We also have this 26th Regiment of Foot button, another larger button, so for the front of a uniform. The eye has deteriorated off, so you can see the remnants of the iron deteriorating from the ground. Also, the mold seams as well from the pewter mold. And the 26th Regiment, guard of the 26th Regiment under Captain William Delaplace, was the guard that was here when the fort was captured by Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold on May 10, 1775. So this really from the period of either 1772, 3, 4, up until the capture of the fort. So it is interesting sometimes when you see these artifacts to wonder what parts of history that they would have witnessed and been a part of. And that goes as well for our 26th Regiment of Foot cartridge box plate here that we have on. This is a reproduction piece of leather that it has been placed on, but this is a brass cartridge box plate, and it's just part of that insignia that was used to really sort of create this sort of wonderful assemblage of different uniforms and pieces of accoutrement to outfit a regiment, and really was splashy and colorful and really amazing to help them create this uniform look to the members of the regiment. Sometimes they would have had it on other parts of their accoutrements, but this part specifically is for a cartridge box. Now, the 26th Regiment of Foot captured here May 10th, they also had women and children. The lieutenant that is here, Jocelyn Feltham, he creates a list of the men's names that were here during the capture, and he also lists 24 women and children. The women were not, of course, getting their names listed with the history that was here, but they were mentioned in a number. And one of the most amazing artifacts or sets of artifacts that we have here are these pair of pattens. And these are demonstrably the only artifact archaeologically. Perhaps we have some pins, of course, that were used by women, but they could have also been used by men. But the production of pattens was significantly, purposely made for women. So this is just the bottom of the pattern, this iron rivet here, iron oval with these rivets, but there would have been a wooden sole that would have been put on top and attached to these iron circles, and then would have had some leather straps or strings on them. And women's shoes during the period were usually made of fabric. The upper part of the shoes were made of fabric. So to keep these shoes, their fabric shoes, out of the muck and grime and the work that they were doing, they would put their shoes, stand themselves onto these pattens so that they could walk through the muddy parade ground, or they could be sweeping out the barracks. So archaeologically, the wood hasn't survived, but we do have the bottom of the pattens, and they are just absolutely remarkable. And perhaps were used by the women that were here when the fort was captured in 1775. So again, you look at these objects and just wonder what types of history that they have witnessed, the events that happened here at Fort Ticonderoga. So these are just a small assemblage of some of the artifacts from the interwar period, but hopefully you can come visit our exhibit in 2021 here that is opening in May. And if not, again, please check out these objects on the Ticonderoga Online Collections database. And to learn more about upcoming events, you can visit the website at www.fortticonderoga.org. To see upcoming events, check out our Center for Digital History page, and as well, you can follow us on social media through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to keep up to date on other projects that we are working on. Thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.